14 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Liftoff will be about 1 hour before sunrise here on Florida's Space Coast, and if we're lucky, we may see a beautiful contrail at first light. At the time of launch at 5:49 and 2 seconds Eastern Time, the space station will be flying 258 miles over the Indian Ocean south of Sri Lanka. And now with T-minus 13 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, we want to focus on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We will turn it over to Hawthorne to take us through launch at 5:49 this morning. John?
We're inside T-minus 14 minutes. Everything is still looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon, 49 minutes and 2 seconds after the hour. Falcon 9 began propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. Loading of the RP-1 fuel onto stage 2 is complete. Fuel loading is continuing on the first stage. We're over half full, and it'll finish at T-minus 6 minutes. The densified liquid oxygen loading is continuing on the first stage, and we began loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage a few minutes ago. The liquid oxygen loading will wrap up T-minus 3 minutes on the first stage, about T-minus 2 minutes on the second stage. Checkouts of the thrust vector controllers, what we call TVC wiggles, are coming up, along with throttle valve checkouts on the engines. That's where we move the engines a little bit, make sure the hydraulics are ready to go. Currently, the range is go, ready to support, working no issues, and we continue to have good weather, both at the launch pad at ground level, at the upper altitude winds, and downrange at the contingency landing sites. On the Dragon spacecraft, the Dragon mission director and team, they're reporting no issues. Their communication checkouts are complete. The crew access arm is retracted, as you see on your monitors, away from the vehicle. The launch escape system is armed. The crew is strapped in and ready to go. Final instructions of the crew will be coming at T-minus 10 minutes. They'll configure their displays for launch. That'll give them insight into how the launch is proceeding, and it provides constant updates on vehicle health. And for Dragon at T-minus 5 minutes, we'll hear it enter terminal count as they transition to internal power. Now we're going to hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to T-minus 0 and to the liftoff. Now, Gary, we talked about the ascent sequence of events that are coming up here. You and Jesse went through that a little while ago, but we're also going to have abort modes. Can you explain a little bit about what the abort mode callouts are that we might hear?
That's right, John. We're continuing to track that the Falcon 9 and Dragon are looking good for launch, but just in case anything were to happen, Dragon is fully prepared to initiate an abort and use those Super Draco engines to escape from a speeding Falcon 9. On the way uphill, you'll hear a series of letter and number combinations. Those will denote the stage that the rocket is on and the abort zone that we're on as well. On first stage, you'll hear abort zones A and B. That will cover the Falcon 9's ascent up to about the northern border of North Carolina, about 7.5 to 8 miles in altitude. And the stage 2 will have stage 2A through E. Mostly it will be stage A, or stage 2A abort zone, but towards the end of the 6 minutes that stage 2 will be firing, you'll hear the numbers start going out from B to E, with E being an abort to orbit. All of these capabilities enabled on the Dragon spacecraft to make sure that the crew will be delivered safely into orbit. Inside 10 minutes and 30 seconds, we should be hearing some final status, maybe a good luck and Godspeed from some of the ground teams here, ensuring that the crew is ready to go, that Falcon 9, Dragon, and all the support teams are ready for launch.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirmed crew displays are configured for launch.
Displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX copies. Shane, Megan, Aki, Tama. We're thrilled to have crew on board Endeavour once again, and truly honored to have you all at the helm. It's been a pleasure training alongside you ahead of this historic launch. We wish you a great mission, good luck, and enjoy the ride.
Thank you, Chad, Christian, Frank, and all the teams who got our crew and vehicle ready for this mission. I want to say a special thank you to our families and friends. We're incredibly grateful for your support and sacrifice during our training and our upcoming flight. Our crew is flying astronauts from NASA, ESA, and JAXA, which hasn't happened in over 20 years. We're excited to represent our nations, agencies, and all of humanity. Off the Earth, for the Earth, Endeavour is ready to go.
All right, some celebratory handshakes from inside the Crew Dragon. That was the voice of the Corps, Chad Healy, here in Mission Control Hawthorne. Next series of events, John, will be the engine chill. Everything's looking good so far.
Yeah, it is. We're actually watching the fuel trim valves on the Merlin 1D engines going through some checkouts right now. And as you said, at T-minus 7 minutes, we're going to start a sequence of events that begins with opening the pre-valves. Currently, the liquid oxygen, the kerosene fuel on the Falcon 9 first, second stages is separated from the Merlin engines. T-minus 7 minutes, just over a minute from now, we open the pre-valves. That allows propellant down to the top of the engine or the inlet to the turbo pumps. At the same time, we open up bleed valves on the turbo pumps, and that allows a little bit of that densified ultra-cold liquid oxygen to flow through the pump and to chill down the liquid oxygen pump. That way, when we get to T-minus 2 seconds and we spin the pumps up and everything comes to full power, we're not pulling very cold liquid oxygen through a warm pump. So as that cools it down right now, that'll get it ready for that ignition sequence in the last couple of seconds. So we should hear that call out that the stage 1 engine chill has started. You'll also hear in flight, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes into flight, MVAC chill has begun. That's also a repeat sequence there where we open the bleed valve and begin chilling that engine one more time before it lights after stage separation. Right now we're waiting to see the pre-valves come open and the chill begin.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
Yep, and there's the call out. We've got indication pre-valves coming open on the engines. And we have begun to chill in the Merlin engines for flight.
That's right, John. Now inside 6 minutes, 40 seconds. RP1 rocket-grade kerosene is completely filled in the second stage. We're anticipating about 30 more seconds for the first stage to be completely filled with that RP1 refined kerosene. The liquid oxygen will continue to flow through the first and second stages up to the final minutes before
Stage
T0.
1 RP load is complete.
All right, confirmation. We have 100% fill of RP1 on both the first and second stages. 6 minutes to go until an instantaneous launch window today. The next milestone will be Dragon to transition to configure for terminal count. And this time, terminal count, the Dragon will be on internal power, no longer relying on the lines from the ground. And from there, the Falcon 9 propellant tanks will pressurize for strong back retract. That'll be another visual milestone. The clamps just below the Dragon's unpressurized trunk will open, and the strong back will tilt back just 2 degrees. Then right after liftoff, back to 45 degrees. Again, RP1 kerosene, both on the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen continues to flow through on the first and second stages. That very densified, very cold liquid oxygen.
Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal count.
Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
All right, John, good calls and right on time. Dragon is now on internal power.
Okay, next major event coming up is going to be opening the clamp arms around the second stage in preparation for retracting the strong back away from the vehicle to get ready for liftoff.
Strong back is retracting.
We heard the call out. Strong back is beginning to retract. We're into the automated sequence. we should see the clamp arms that are just visible there around the top of the second stage begin to open up. Once they are open, then the strong back will begin to move away from the Falcon 9. Watching the sequence, a nice view from up on top of the fixed service structure. The arms are opening. And we're beginning to recline away from the Falcon 9. We'll move the strong back 2 degrees away from the Falcon 9. That'll get it ready for liftoff. And at T0, when the flight computer commands liftoff, the hydraulics on the strong back will pull it to a position 45 degrees away from the Falcon 9, giving it the clearance for launch. So right now, the strong back is moving away. Everything proceeding nominally.
It's great to hear, John. We're also anxiously awaiting the liquid oxygen complete on the first stage. Should hear that call very shortly.
Dragon has transitioned to terminal count and is on internal power.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Okay, we've heard the call out. Stage 1 LOX load is complete. We're loading liquid oxygen on the second stage for about another 30 seconds or so. Once we get the liquid oxygen load complete on the second stage, the propellant line that runs up the side of the strong back that carries liquid oxygen, we'll vent that line down to make sure there's no liquid in it when we get to liftoff. When we do that, we open up valves on the strong back, and as Kate and Marie were talking earlier, when we vent off that very cold gaseous oxygen, it'll merge with the warm, humid Florida air, and you'll get a large white plume of condensation off of the back of the strong back. That'll be normal, coming about a minute and a half before launch. Everything continuing to look good.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Dragon is in auto idle.
All right, with that, the Falcon 9 is fully fueled. We have fuel on both the first and second stages, and both stages are filled with liquid oxygen.
Gas closeout has started. Expect loud venting.
Dragon is also in auto idle. The flight computers on Dragon, maintaining their calculations, standing by, waiting for the T0 mark. 1 minute, 15 seconds until launch. The 1 minute mark, Dragon will transition to countdown, and the flight termination system will arm the computers on Falcon 9. We'll be talking to the computers on Dragon and can issue an abort if necessary.
FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
All right, 50 seconds to go. Everything is ready for an on-time launch today.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
Copy, go for launch.
Ground teams are ready, and the crew inside Dragon is ready. 30 seconds to go until launch.
Seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Mission and liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station. The vehicle is pitching downrange. 9 Merlin engines on the first stage, providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Hearing good calls on first stage performance so far.
We are T plus 30 seconds into the second rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Falcon 9 will be throttling down the 9 Merlin engines shortly here in preparation for maximum dynamic pressure. And there's that call out for the throttle down. Maximum dynamic pressure, max Q, is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees throughout ascent. So throttling down does help us pass.
Supersonic.
Throttling down helps us pass through this period, which should be coming here shortly.
Max Q.
There's that call out that we have just passed through max Q.
Stage 1, throttle up.
And we
One
can
Bravo.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
All right, 1 Bravo is the second abort mode on the first stage. The first stage continues to fire for 2 minutes, 35 seconds, 1.5 minutes into today's flight. Falcon 9 now traveling at more than 1,500 miles an hour.
MVAC engine chill started.
All right, the engine chill for the second stage single Merlin engine has started. About 30 more seconds of the first stage firing to bring our 4 astronauts into orbit.
Now from here, coming up in about 20-some seconds, we're going to have 3 major milestones. We'll have shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines. We're beginning to throttle them down. We will then get stage separation.
1, throttle down.
And then we will get ignition of the second stage engine to propel Dragon and the Falcon 9 second stage into orbit.
Two
Nico.
Alpha.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Confirmed.
Acquisition signal, yes.
MVAC ignition.
And we have ignition of the second stage. You see the green flash of that T-TEB fluid. The expansion nozzle on the second stage Merlin vacuum glowing that bright red that we like to see. Good performance on the second stage so far.
And on the left side of your screen, we saw the exhaust of the second stage engine streaming past the first stage as the grid fins are coming out. We also briefly had a view of the lights of Central Florida in the background. Currently, the first stage is continuing to coast up to apogee. It's unpowered. It'll reach a peak height and then begin to descend back down toward the Earth's atmosphere, where it will light 3 engines to slow down in preparation for what will be a landing burn on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. You can see the grid fins are deployed right now. The first stage
Dragon,
pulsing.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
We're pulsing the thrusters.
Signal of Bermuda.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear a call out from the crew, nominal trajectory. So we're beginning to move the first stage into position so it can do the entry burn.
Four minutes, 15 seconds into today's flight. Second stage propelling our 4 astronauts up the eastern seaboard. We'll continue to fire. It's a 6-minute burn to deliver the astronauts into orbit. We'll wait for a cue for good orbital insertion after that. Meanwhile, we'll be hearing check-ins on the vehicle's trajectory and performance, as well as check-ins with some of the ground stations as it passes over throughout the 6 minutes of the second stage firing.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Getting good views of both the first and second stage from the onboard cameras.
Acquisition of signal, boss.
The New Hampshire tracking station has acquired the second stage telemetry signal. Meanwhile, the first stage has reached apogee, and it's now beginning to descend from a height. It's currently about 167 kilometers up, and in a few minutes we will get the entry burn of the second stage, of the first stage.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Right on cue, those check-ins on the second stage performance. Once a minute, everything's looking good on that second
Stage 2
stage.
propulsion is nominal.
Stage 2 continues to climb. The vehicle now exceeding 8,000 miles an hour at an altitude of about 124 miles.
And just about 1 minute from now, we will begin the entry burn of the first stage. That'll consist of lighting the center engine, and then shortly afterwards, 2 more engines for a 3-engine burn to slow down the first stage in preparation for entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another check-in, and the crew confirming they're hearing the same thing. The vehicle about to exceed about 10,000 miles per hour.
Meanwhile, first stage down at 90 kilometers, getting ready to relight 3 engines for the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
We've got the center engine ignition, and there come the 2 side engines. Now this entry burn will last about 29 seconds. It's going to significantly slow down the vehicle in preparation for hitting the denser part of the Earth's atmosphere. Entry burn complete. We're down below 35 kilometers, continuing to look good on the first stage, heading to the Atlantic Ocean for a landing on the drone ship.
While second stage is less than a minute away from cutoff.
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
Shannon called out at the back end of the stage 2, a few seconds until cutoff.
MVAC shutdown.
Dragon, SpaceX, launch escape system disarmed.
Launch escape system disarmed. Copy.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Copy, nominal orbital insertion.
All right, the Falcon 9 second stage has done its job, delivering our 4 crew into orbit.
You hear the applause here in Hawthorne. We're waiting to get a video signal back from the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. And the view from the onboard camera, we saw it just briefly. It looks like first stage on the drone ship. Getting views of the Dragon trunk. So the first stage is on the drone ship, successfully landed. And more importantly, second stage is in a nominal orbit with the Dragon spacecraft getting ready for some important events coming up, Gary.
That's right. About 2 more minutes. The Dragon and the second stage of the Falcon 9 will be in a coast phase. It'll take that long until the spacecraft separates from the Falcon 9. Of course, both now in a nominal orbit. It's great to see some of the views of the Earth as it passes by over the North Atlantic Ocean. All right, we're getting shots of the crew in orbit. I'm looking for that 0G indicator. Can't seem to see it in this shot, but we have a minute to go until we have spacecraft separation. Dragon traveling at nearly 17,000 miles per hour at an altitude of 124 miles. Again, the 4-person crew of Endeavour is in orbit right now. Less than 30 seconds until we have spacecraft separation. Ten seconds to spacecraft separation. We should hear words from the core here in Mission Control Hawthorne once we have successful separation. Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon, SpaceX, Falcon team wishes you a great rest of your trip. Say hi to the crew of Dragon who's waiting for us and let them know your rocket is home safe. Thanks for flying our first flight-proven, crewed Falcon 9. See you airside, Crew 2.
Thank you very much. We're great. It's glad to be back in space for all of us, and we'll send our regards to Crew 1 when we get there. Thanks.
Absolutely stunning views from both inside the cabin, seeing the excitement of our 4-person crew inside Endeavour, and watching Endeavour drift away from the camera on the second stage as the Earth passes by on an orbital sunrise.
SpaceX Endeavour week.
And Endeavour, you cut out a little bit there. If the question was if you're go to open visors, you are go to open visors at this time.
Copy and work. Thanks.
All right, 13.5 minutes past liftoff. The crew is in orbit, traveling at nearly 17,000 miles an hour.
Well, Gary, I don't know about you, but that was a great countdown. Everything sounded great. Right on time,
Dragon,
actually
SpaceX,
a little ahead
we
of
see a
time.
nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
Got a good orbit out of Falcon 9, and first
Copy,
stage
great
landed
news,
on the
thanks.
drone ship. And we're in the sunlight over the Atlantic Ocean with the Dragon spacecraft. All in all, a great day.
I think everybody's jealous of the crew in orbit right now, John. These views, even just from the cameras, are absolutely stunning. It was great to see our crew members get into orbit. They already performed successful checkouts of the 12 service section Dracos around Dragon. The next milestone will be the deployment of the nose cone. That'll be about a 5-minute process, but that'll expose the forward bulkhead Dracos and prepare them for checkout. There's a phase burn. There's 5 major burns that are needed to get the Crew Dragon up to rendezvous with the International Space Station over the next 23 hours. And so that first phase burn is coming up real soon in about 35 minutes, actually less than 35 minutes. And Jesse, I don't know if you could see the 0G indicator, but I was told it's a penguin. I'm trying to look for it.
I'm looking for it too. Keep an eye out on that left-hand screen.
Meanwhile, the Dragon is configured for a nose cone deployment. We'll stand by for when that sequence starts. The nose cone itself opens just beyond 90 degrees, about 105 degrees, to expose the forward bulkhead Dracos. Those forward bulkhead Dracos, 4 of them at the very top of the Dragon, will do the bulk of the work when it comes to firing the Draco engines for minutes at a time to increase the Dragon's speed, altitude, and phasing to catch up with the International Space Station again over the next 23 hours. Meanwhile, we're still getting camera views from the second stage, looking at that expansion nozzle. Did its work beautifully to deliver the 4 crew into orbit. Dragon over the North Atlantic Ocean.
And Gary, this is John. I think I heard a call out on one of the Dragon nets that the first set of nose cone hooks is open. So it sounds like that sequence is going well.
Very good. Well, from here in Hawthorne, it was very exciting to see the Falcon 9 liftoff and deliver our 4-person crew into orbit. We're going to be with you throughout the entire phase, the rendezvous phase, until Dragon and this 4-person crew docks with the International Space Station. That'll be over the next 23 hours. We'll bring you through some of those major burns that are happening. But I am so jealous of Marie and the group over there over at the Kennedy Space Center. You actually got to see the launch and probably feel it as well. Marie, what was that like?
Oh, it was just spectacular. And, you know, the sun hasn't come up yet here in Florida, but, you know, we were able to just turn around and see the launch right behind us, and it lit up the sky, just absolutely breathtaking.
It was so astounding to see the colors. I mean, it was not just your usual fireball, but there was the pulsating towards the end. And Kate, you're much more eloquent describing that sequence, which I appreciate you doing that while we were
happy to help
staring. It was so fun, and knowing that those guys were enjoying the ride along with the sights that we got to see made all the difference. There's nothing more relieving than crew in orbit.
And of course, we were so lucky to have clear weather here, being able to see the re-entry burn as well. I was hoping we were going to be able to catch landing burn, but unfortunately clouds on the horizon did block that view. But it was also such a treat to be able to see the re-entry of that first stage as well.
Let's go over to Jasmine to get some reaction. I think she's with the NASA administrator now. Jasmine?
Thanks. Thank you, Marie. Yes, I'm joined again here with Steve Jerzik. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you.
So we just had the privilege of watching that spectacular launch in person. What was that like?
Watching a launch, particularly a human space launch, will never get old for me. It's just thrilling to see those 9 engines light up and it lift off the pad, get to the main engine cutoff and separation, and get that second stage started. And of course, pre-dawn launches are always amazing, and you know, we could see the vehicle pretty much through the entire trajectory up to Earth orbit. It was just spectacular.
Right. No, absolutely. It was just stunning, and the sun is just now starting to peek over the clouds here. So do you have any final words of encouragement for our NASA team, our SpaceX team, and our international partners?
Yeah, you know, partnerships are key to what we do, particularly in human spaceflight. Our partnership with SpaceX has been tremendous. 3rd launch in less than a year, after almost a 10-year gap in human spaceflight, launching astronauts from American soil on American rockets. So our partnership with SpaceX and our commercial partners, other commercial partners, is critical, and our international partners. We could not do this without them. Very international mission with 2 U.S. astronauts, and one from ESA and one from JAXA, and obviously the ISS is the largest engineering international collaboration in the history of humankind, and it continues to amaze me how well we work together in doing all the research and technology on ISS. And I'm just so grateful for the NASA SpaceX team for their hard work and getting this 3rd launch off, the Crew 2 launch, and looking forward to docking and hatch opening and the welcome ceremony, and also looking forward to Crew 1 return next Thursday on the 28th.
Right. A lot of action still going on at the station right now. So as you mentioned, the next big milestone for Crew 2 will be docking at the station. So where are you going to be for that action?
I'm actually going to stay here at Kennedy Space Center and follow the free flight up to docking, and then I'm going to participate in the welcoming ceremony with my counterparts from ESA, the Director General of ESA, and the President of JAXA, and welcome the Crew 2 astronauts to the ISS.
Fantastic. Kennedy is the place to be right now then, I guess. Do you have any final remarks that you want to share with us today?
Hey, you know, I'm just so proud of the team. I'm so proud of what this team has been able to accomplish over the past year, particularly. It's been especially challenging, global pandemic and other challenges, and just the focus of the team to get these 3 crew launches off, as well as launch Perseverance, land Perseverance, first powered flight, controlled powered flight of a vehicle on another planet, first time generating oxygen from the atmosphere of Mars, and really looking forward to the core stage for SLS getting here and us moving forward to the first uncrewed test flight, Artemis 1 of SLS and Orion. So accomplished an incredible amount in this last year and much more to accomplish in the year to come.
Absolutely. We've got a bright future right here at NASA. Thank you so much, NASA Administrator Steve Jerzik, for joining us today. Now we're going to take it back to the KSC host desk.
Thanks, Jasmine. Shane, Megan, Thomas, and Aki are on course to arrive at the International Space Station around 5:10 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And we're going to stay on the air for continuous live coverage along their entire ride to station. Though our coverage here at Kennedy Space Center is concluding, we're going to turn it over to the teams in Hawthorne and Houston to take us through the next phases of the Crew 2 mission, all the way through hatch opening and a welcome ceremony for the crew.
And for those of you watching online on YouTube, take a look at the description below the video. There you'll find the new link for the Crew 2 rendezvous and coast phase. Live coverage will continue at that new location shortly. And if you're watching on NASA TV, you won't miss a thing, and coverage will continue.
That's right, and as you follow along, we invite you to tune into a post-launch news conference at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time right here on NASA TV, where NASA and SpaceX will take questions live. In addition to NASA TV, you can always follow along on Twitter at @NASA, @SpaceX, and nasa.gov for mission updates. Huge thanks to all of our guests for joining us today, and thank all of you for getting up early on the East Coast and watching. Now here are highlights from the journey to orbit off the Earth for the Earth.
We can see the astronauts are now working with SpaceX suit technicians and the closeout team. And that's our commander, Shane Kimbrough.
There's Megan MacArthur getting helped into her gloves in her spacesuit. And mission specialist Thomas Pesquet will be making his second trip to space. But that's Aki Hoshide having a laugh with some of the suit technicians. There's Shane Kimbrough, pilot Megan MacArthur in the front, Megan blowing kisses. Thomas and Aki ready for their ride to the space station. And here they come, the Crew 2 astronauts taking their first steps outside before their journey to space.
This moment, they're now going to have the opportunity to wave goodbye from a safe distance, and it looks like Bob Behnken is there and with the son of he and Megan MacArthur.
ONC departure on schedule.
Right, so we just heard that announcement that the crew has departed the operations and checkout building on schedule. We can see the astronauts inside the crew access arm. Commander Shane Kimbrough, here he is climbing inside Crew Dragon Endeavour. We call this process ingress.
We now see suit technicians will help the crew members get buckled in. As you can see, the side hatch has just been closed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Mission and liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station. The vehicle is pitching downrange. 9 Merlin engines on the first stage providing 1.7 billion pounds of thrust. Hearing good calls on first stage performance so far.
Plus 30 seconds into the second rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. We watched the crew suited up.
Okay, I'm going to find the carabiner that is on the outboard side of the survival gear.
Acquisition of signal, Dubai.
We'll need you to verify that carabiner is locked. Then once verified, flip the carabiner underneath the cargo strap. Then carefully tuck the red tether underneath the black cargo strap. How copy?
All right, the carabiner that's out on the outboard side, we want to verify it's locked, then we'll slip it under the cargo strap, and I missed the stuff after that.
Oh, good words on that first part. Following the flipping of the carabiner, carefully tuck the red tether underneath the black cargo strap.
Okay, copy. Tuck the red tether under the black cargo strap, and that is complete. Someone did that for us.
Good news. Thanks, Dragon.
We heard some good comms between the crew and the Corps here, the Corps providing some instructions to the crew. But it has been such an incredible morning so far. We watched the crew as they suited up in the ONC building, get in their Teslas, ride down to the pad, ingress on Dragon. We had an on-time liftoff this morning at 5:49 a.m. Eastern Time. Stage 1 came back and landed for its second landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. And then we had a great Dragon separation from Falcon 9 and then a nose cone deploy on Dragon.
That's right, but as we said, the mission has just begun. Right now, NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur, European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Aki Hoshide are flying free inside Dragon after that successful separation from Falcon 9. So we've got about 23 hours until they arrive at the space station, and we'll be here with you for the entire trip.
Immediately after the Dragon spacecraft separated from Falcon 9, it began what we call the activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon is configured for on-orbit operations. The phase begins after separation of Dragon from Falcon 9 and ends with the completion of the final co-elliptic burn. Our initial orbit today is 190 by 210 kilometers, with those values representing the perigee and apogee of the orbit, or the lowest and highest points over Earth. That means that the orbit isn't a perfect circle, but more like a slight ellipse.
So over the next 23 hours, Dragon will execute a series of burns, which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. There are 5 major burns, or firings, of the Draco thrusters on Dragon that will bring the spacecraft close to station before we begin final approach maneuvers. The first burn is called the phase burn, which is performed at the first apogee, or the highest point of the initial orbit, and raises Dragon's perigee, or the lowest point, to a higher altitude.
The next burn, which is based on what our orbital data shows us, is the boost burn, which will raise Dragon's orbit until its orbit reaches an altitude of just 10 kilometers lower than the space station. Followed soon after by the closed co-elliptic burn to place Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station. This means that the crew will be about 10 kilometers lower than the station during their entire orbit around Earth. The fourth maneuver is the transfer burn, where we're raising Dragon's apogee, or highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers below station. And we round everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath station, just 2.5 kilometers below.
Then we'll get into the approach initiation and the final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also when we start integrated operations between the Dragon control team here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston. The teams will transition to integrated operations roughly 45 minutes prior to approach initiation. During the approach, SpaceX's flight controllers will work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including bidirectional communication with the station using the C2V2 system, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles, and sets up a data stream from Dragon to the station, giving another path for Dragon telemetry to come to the ground and giving additional command capability to astronauts aboard the station. They'll also maneuver Dragon to the proper attitude and initialize the navigation sensors used for the methodical approach to the station.
Tomorrow at approximately 2:40 a.m. Pacific Time or 7:40 GMT, Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it's about 400 meters directly below the station. This maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of the 2 safety zones around the station that requires a set of go-no-go polls with the different control teams. The first zone is called the approach ellipsoid, which is an imaginary shape measuring 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers, essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside this ellipsoid, referred to the teams as AE, it is configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. This means that if Dragon lost...
Dragon SpaceX, we are go for the burn.
Endeavour copy, go for the burn.
And we heard a call out that we are go for that first burn. Now this means that if Dragon lost all control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its orbital path would take it inside the approach ellipsoid.
So once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below the station, it will be at waypoint 0, which is the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at 400 meters or continue on if all systems check out on the approach to waypoint 1. By this point, the teams will do a go-no-go poll for Dragon to move inside the keep-out sphere, another zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the station with a radius of 200 meters. It's another chance to confirm all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before moving closer to the station, and carries a requirement similar to the AE that Dragon's orbital trajectory would not bring it inside that sphere if control was lost. But this time only for 4 orbits, or about 6 hours, instead of 24 hours.
Dragon's move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it will be on what we call the docking axis, which essentially means it is directly in front of the docking port. The crew is headed to the forwardmost port on the International Space Station, the Node 2 forward port. That is where Dragon docked for both our demonstration missions as well as Crew 1 last November. For those following along, Resilience, the Dragon spacecraft used for Crew 1, recently moved from the forward port to the space-facing port on the Harmony module in order to make room for the arrival of Crew 2. Harmony, or Node 2, is where both of the international docking adapters are located. These were installed for new commercial spacecraft flights and any other future spacecraft that also use the international docking standard.
Now, once Dragon is only 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the docking adapter. Dragon will then fly in and make contact with the docking adapter, giving us what we call a soft capture. The soft capture ring then retracts until sensors indicate it's time for hooks to drive in place to give us a hard capture and firmly secure Dragon to the station. Then it's time for leak checks and hatch opening, which is currently timelined to come about 2 hours following docking.
So we have a lot of action to cover over the next 23.5 hours. So let's head down to Mission Control Houston and check back in with Courtney Beasley to get a rundown of all the work being done on station to prepare for Dragon's arrival. How's it going, Courtney?
Thanks, Jesse. A lot of prep work went into this day to make sure we were launching Dragon and this new crew to a fully functional orbital laboratory. Several hours before the crew boarded Dragon, the space station team did their go, no-go poll. There are several key systems we have to ensure are fully functioning before NASA can give their go for launch. And one of those more obvious is making sure our life support systems are functioning normally. This includes the ability to turn water into oxygen for the astronauts to breathe, the ability to remove carbon dioxide exhaled by the station crew into the atmosphere, and our water recovery system, which is now able to recycle about 90% of the water we send to the station. The teams also made sure there were no issues with the station's power or cooling systems. We also work with our Russian counterparts to ensure that both means of controlling the station's attitude, or which way it's pointing, are fully functional. Right now, the Expedition 65 crew aboard the station is awake, preparing for the arrival of Crew 2. Right now, there are 7 astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the station, including Crew 1 astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker, along with JAXA's Soichi Noguchi. They were recently joined by a crew arriving on the Russian Soyuz, including NASA's Mark Vande Hei and Roscosmos cosmonauts Oleg Novinsky and Pyotr Dubrov. When we get to arrival, NASA astronaut and Expedition 65 flight engineer Victor Glover will be monitoring Dragon's approach, using special software to make sure Dragon is flying in the expected areas and on standby to help in any abort scenarios. Once docked, he'll be primed for setting up the hardware on the station side to get ready for hatch opening and pre-positioning some ducting that will be used to integrate Dragon's atmosphere with the rest of the station. So again, a lot of work has already been done to prepare for this day, and the station team remains ready for Dragon to arrive tomorrow morning. For now, back over to Jesse and Gary to take us through the next steps for Dragon.
Thanks, Courtney. We are now waiting for Dragon to move into the phase burn. As we mentioned earlier, there are 5 major burns where Draco thrusters will ignite and bring the spacecraft close to station before we begin final approach maneuvers. Our initial orbit after Dragon separated from Falcon 9 was 210 by 190 kilometers, and those values representing the apogee, or the highest point over Earth, and the perigee, or the lowest point over Earth. That means that the orbit is in a perfect circle, and we're going to see Dragon raise its orbit using the Draco thrusters over the coming hours as it chases down the space station.
So the first major burn coming up very shortly in about 7 minutes is the phase burn, which is performed at the first apogee of the initial orbit and raises Dragon's perigee to a higher altitude. This burn will use Draco thrusters located both on the forward bulkhead, or the very top of Dragon, and around the service section, or the lower part of the Dragon capsule. The thrusters located on the bulkhead are used primarily for those delta velocity burns, which will gradually raise Dragon's orbit over the coming hours. There are 4 of these thrusters, and they're located beneath the nose cone until it's deployed.
In addition to those 4 bulkhead Draco thrusters, there are 12 more Dracos in the service section, which is the area along the lower part of the Dragon capsule. These will be used in every burn and are primarily there to help maintain Dragon's attitude, which is especially important when doing the finely tuned approach into docking. They can also be used for smaller transitional maneuvers.
All right, so as we wait for that phase burn to come up in just a few minutes, we may be able to squeeze in some social questions. So if you're curious about the aspect of today's crew mission, please submit your questions using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica. All right, it looks like we have one that we might be able to squeeze in. Yeah, here's the first one from All Rockets Boy. What is engine chill?
Engine chill is basically where we let a little bit of the very, very cold liquid oxygen into the engines, and that prevents some of that shock when we let the full flow of the liquid oxygen into the engines. We want to prevent, it's very cold, so we want to prep the engines before that super chilled liquid oxygen hits those turbo pumps.
All right. Let's see if we can squeeze in another one. How fast is the space station moving on the Earth in miles or kilometers per hour? Now this one I know.
How fast, Gary?
That's right. It's this is something that we actually love to share because it is impressive how fast that it goes around the Earth. It goes at 17,500 miles per hour. I think that comes up to something around maybe 28,000 kilometers per hour, I think is the conversion. But it's super, super fast, and this is for an orbit in low Earth orbit. So if you go into higher altitudes, the speed becomes a little bit more just to maintain this geosynchronous orbit, but that's what low Earth orbit is. Right now, Dragon is traveling at approximately 17,000 miles an hour, maybe just a little bit less, and it's 124.
And the ignition?
Yeah, that's pretty fast, Gary.
Yeah.
We've got another question here. What are the snacks the Crew 2 can eat during the journey to the space station? And how about water?
in nominal.
Oh, that's
orbit
right.
burn.
There are plenty of snacks that the crew can eat. All of these snacks come in either meals ready to eat or in freeze-dried containers, and they have the ability to either rehydrate them. So, for example, strawberries. I've had rehydrated strawberries. They're actually pretty good. They also just have them in vacuum-sealed containers, like just little candies or nuts. If you have a combination like mixed nuts or anything. So yeah, they have a lot of those. They do have to track their daily food intake, so you do have to scan it. I'm sure that astronauts do cheat, but you're not supposed to.
So you're saying if I don't want to cook, I can just fly on Crew Dragon and have some MREs to eat?
That's right. Meals ready to eat. You just rip it open and start it. Yeah, save a lot of time. That's for sure. All right, we're coming up at about 3 minutes, I think, until the phase burn. Might be able to squeeze in another question. If you keep sending them in using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica, we'll continue to answer them throughout today's broadcast. This first burn is the phase burn. It did change a little bit from what we were looking at in terms of the trajectory to get to the International Space Station. If we were to launch yesterday, of course, we did scrub. The winds at the pad or in the ascent corridor were a little above what we were wanting. And actually, teams did say that if we were to launch yesterday or attempt to launch yesterday, we would have scrubbed because those winds did end up not being what we wanted to. But instead, we are lifted off today right on time. So this first phase burn is a little bit shorter than it would have been if we were to go yesterday. So this first phase burn is about 2 minutes long, just a little bit longer. But that'll, again, raise the perigee of the orbit or the lowest point to a slightly higher altitude.
Awesome. And while we are waiting for that phase burn, we have one more question from social. Do the astronauts on the ISS communicate with their families at whatever time they want, or do they have to be at a specific time or following certain procedures?
They have a very tight
SpaceX
schedule.
Endeavor, comm check from the cabin mic.
SpaceX has you loud and clear. How me?
We have you loud and clear, Chad.
Great news.
All right, so that was Core Chad Healy here in Mission Control Hawthorne. Responding was Commander of Crew Dragon Endeavor, Shane Kimbrough. The first major burn, there are 5 during the rendezvous phase of Endeavor's approach to the International Space Station. That's expected in less than a minute from now. Again, that'll be a 2-minute firing of Dragon's Draco thrusters, a combination of both the forward bulkhead Dracos that are now exposed thanks to the nose cone opening on the forward end of Dragon, and the service section Dracos that surround the Dragon capsule.
If you're just now joining us, what you are looking at is Mission Control Hawthorne, and on your left-hand screen is the core, who is speaking with the crew throughout the entire duration of the mission.
Okay, and we do have confirmation of phase burn start. Forward bulkhead Dracos firing. This is again a 2-minute burn, a little more than 2 minutes. and this will raise the Dragon's perigee, or the lowest point in its orbit, to a higher altitude.
If you're just now joining us, we are currently in the phase burn as we speak. And what you're seeing on your screen is Mission Control Hawthorne with the core on your left-hand side. We are waiting for confirmation.
Dragon SpaceX burn nominal.
Copy nominal burn.
And perfect timing. We had a good call out of a nominal phase burn. Now that that phase burn is complete, coming up in just a few minutes, the crew will doff their suits, which means to remove them until they are ready to make their approach to station tomorrow. Following suit doffing at 4:10 a.m. Pacific time or 11:10 GMT, the crew will have their first meal on board Dragon, and they have enough food on board Dragon for 12 meals each, along with snacks for the trip up. Now, these are MREs, or meals ready to eat, and they're essentially prepackaged meals ready for consumption without any heating or addition of ingredients. They also, of course, have water up there with them, 55 liters or 14.5 gallons of water.
Now, this is a little bit different from what you see on board the International Space Station. They do have meals ready to eat up there, but they do have a food warmer. So instead of having it at room temperature, they do have the ability to heat it up. If they're having some turkey or chicken, they have that option. They also have freeze-dried food, which just means that it's dehydrated, so they can put it into a machine, and the packets themselves actually have instructions for how much liquid to put into those containers. You can make it warm, you can make it cold or room temperature, but they have a little bit of variety there, as well as some snacks. The water itself is recycled, and they got the recycling process to about 90% on station now. They're trying to improve it even more for when we go on journeys to the moon and Mars, which will be a requirement for that.
That is pretty incredible, using recycled water. We've got MREs, easy-to-eat meals ready to just open up and eat, almost like camping food a little bit, right?
That's right.
And as I mentioned earlier, the crew is getting ready to doff their suits. What does that mean, Gary?
It just is a fancy word for taking off, and we've heard that a lot. If you've been tuning in with us throughout today's coverage, you've probably heard a lot of these spaceflight terms. Doffing is when you take off a suit. Donning would be taking on. We've also, when the crew ingressed or entered into the capsule, that was another one. And then, of course, crew egress, which they won't be doing for a while. They'll rather ingress into the International Space Station once they are docked. But they'll be able to doff their suits and get into a comfortable position. Really, the suits are used for the most dynamic phases of flight. So ascent is definitely one of those. You got the shake, rattle, and roll of a launch, and that suit will help to maintain pressure just in the unlikely event that there were to be a cabin leak inside the Dragon capsule.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, those suits are almost like a second spacecraft, right? And so these are custom suits with their custom seats in Dragon. They go hand in hand with each other. And even though they are custom, I'm sure they are probably ready to get out of those suits. They do have a 23-hour ride to station, so want them to get comfortable. We should hear from the crew a little bit later on in the broadcast, so that should be pretty exciting.
That's true. That event will be pretty special. It will actually get to see them from on orbit, the cameras, and they'll be able to do a show exactly what it's like life aboard the inside of the Dragon capsule, which will only be their home for, like Jesse said, a little more than 23 hours. Then they'll get to go to the International Space Station, way more space, even though there's going to be 11 people on board for a couple of days until Crew 1 departs the International Space Station. Still, you got a lot of room in there for them to do all the scientific experiments and, of course, life aboard. So they have a place to gather together and eat meals. They'll have sleeping quarters. It's really the place where they're going to be spending the bulk of their time, really the purpose of today's mission.
And I've heard a comparison of the size of the International Space Station. It's about the size of a football field, correct?
That's right. About the size of a football field is the entire thing. Now, I've asked several astronauts about, what's it feel like inside? And some people say it's about the size of a 5-bedroom house, but it doesn't really feel that way because it's more long than it is, wide with different bedrooms, this, that, and the other way. So they say it's more like the inside of a 747 aircraft.
Oh, wow. Well, the Crew 2 crew will get to see what that is like very soon. Over the next few hours, we will be staying with you through these 5 major burns. We have completed the phase burns so far on Dragon. And again, we are coming up on suit doffing, where the crew will get out of those suits and get a little bit more comfortable inside of Crew Dragon.
You're getting a live look at both of the control rooms that are monitoring Dragon's approach to the International Space Station. On the right, that's where we are here at SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. The flight controllers there have the primary responsibility of Dragon's rendezvous phase with the International Space Station. Now, that does not mean that the International Space Station flight control room you see at the left over in Houston will be unstaffed at any time. Those rooms are staffed 24 hours a day to watch over the International Space Station. They not only will be looking after that vehicle, but they'll be looking after the Crew Dragon and getting status updates as it makes its way to the International Space Station. Right as we get past these 5 major burns. Again, we just completed the first one, the phase burn. That was 35 minutes right after orbital insertion. It was a 2-minute burn. There's a couple more burns coming up, but that'll complete the rendezvous phase, and then we'll get into the approach phase. Right before we get into the approach ellipsoid, we'll enter into joint operations. When we're in joint operations, that's a whole new set of flight rules. At that time, both of these control rooms that you see on your screen will be looking after
SpaceX for next burn.
We'll be looking after the same procedures. Now we'll stand by for the call on the next burn.
Go ahead for next burn.
And Dragon, we will not be taking the OOP burn that is stated on your timeline. However, we do expect 1 to 2 small phase burns ahead of the boost burn per your displays.
Okay, I copy. No OOP burn, but a couple of small phase burns. Thanks.
Good words.
We heard that call out that there will be no OOP burn. What does OOP mean, Gary?
Oop, there it is, right? Out of plane burn. So, like I said, there are 5 major burns, and they really are calculated for some of the major maneuvers to get the Dragon closer to the International Space Station. An out-of-plane burn is an additional burn that can be utilized if the trajectory needed to be corrected at some point. But that's a good call that doesn't need to be corrected. There's going to be additional phase burns. However, that boost burn that was mentioned is not going to happen for a while. It'll happen about 15 hours from now is the boost burn. However, during that time period, it seems like there's going to be a couple of phase burns which might happen during the crew sleep period, and that jolt might wake them up for just a second, but hopefully they're short enough. Not anything like the boost burn. The boost burn's pretty long, but it might impact them a little bit. But really, that next major burn is the boost burn. The phase burn will just correct it, sort of like the OOP burn, just maybe smaller.
Right, and if you're just now joining us, we are watching Crew 2 make their way to the International Space Station. As a reminder of who is on board, we have the commander, Shane Kimbrough. We have pilot, Megan MacArthur, who is actually the wife of Bob Behnken, who flew on Demo 2 last year. And then we have mission specialist, Thomas Pesquet, as well as Aki Hoshide.
That's right. All 4 will be spending the next 6 months on board the International Space Station, conducting scientific experiments. That really is their mission. The Crew Dragon, really that mission is delivering the crew to the International Space Station for them to conduct all of that science. There is a lot of work to do. One of the major things they're going to be doing during their 6-month stay is upgrading the International Space Station with brand new solar arrays. Those arrays are set to be delivered by the SpaceX Dragon later in the summer, and some of the Crew 2 astronauts may be put on the list to conduct a series of spacewalks to go ahead and install them.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it kind of makes sense that the astronauts on board the station have to take care of the station as well, because nobody else can do it, right?
That's right. In fact, a lot of the outside of the International Space Station was specifically designed to be, this was my favorite term by one of the EVA officers, was EVA-able. It just means that it was specially designed for the crew to interact with it. So you have quick disconnects, you have cables and wire ties, all that are on the outside of the International Space Station. Really, 200 and something spacewalks have been conducted for the maintenance and upgrades needed to maintain the International Space Station.
Wow, that's incredible. And that must be really cool for them to be able to do an EVA walk. Must be very surreal to be outside of the station and be able to see Earth from outer space.
Easily one of the highlights of every astronaut that you can ask questions of. What's some of the highlights of a spacewalk? And that is, or highlights of their trip to space, rather, and that is really a spacewalk. Spacewalks are about 6.5 hours long, roughly, but in that time, they're really dense, packed procedures. It is really just, you got to go from one spot to the other. But one of the most sought after moments is when you have to wait for just a second. So sometimes, for example, there are thermal constraints on the outside of the International Space Station. Some of the components need to be either hot or cold, depending on if the sun is shining on them. So they'll ask the astronauts to just sit back and wait for a second. And that is some of the highly sought after moments, because it's so densely packed that that moment will be they'll finally get to pause and look down at the Earth.
That sounds amazing. I bet it is breathtaking and taking their breath away in that very short moment that they have. So we do have some social questions. Is there preparation for new astronauts, and what are requirements for being an astronaut?
That is a good question. NASA is looking at selecting a new class of astronauts. The most recent class of astronauts was selected in 2017. All of them have trained and have been certified as astronauts. They undergo about 2 years of basic training as astronaut candidates, just T-38 training. Those are the jets. They do some training in the neutral buoyancy laboratory, some survival training. All of them have undergone that. So they are ready for those next steps. In fact, we'll start to see a lot of those guys start flying very, very soon, just being recently selected in 2017. Minimum requirements is you have to have a master's degree in a science or engineering or math field. You have to have relevant experience to whatever degree you have, and you have to have the ability to pass a NASA medical test.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool. So kids, you know what to do if you want to be an astronaut. And some cool views. We are on the space station, and that is astronaut Victor Glover. He is getting the station prepared for the arrival of Crew 2 as we speak. You can see he has his tablet there. He's following the procedures to get the hatch ready for crew arrival.
Not just the hatch, but they'll be doing a number of procedures to get ready for Crew 2's arrival. This right here, what you're looking at, is the CASA. It is the new bedroom of the International Space Station. There are 4 bedrooms on the USOS side, or U.S. operating segment. All 4 are currently occupied, and there are 2 over on the Russian side. Now, with crews flying regularly to and from the International Space Station on both commercial providers and on the Soyuz, we're now moving up from a regular staffing or population rather, of the International Space Station from 6 to 7. So there's a new sleep station for that 7th crew member. Now, when Crew 2 arrives, there's going to be a little bit of a handover, a couple of days where Crew 1, including astronaut Victor Glover, who has been on board the International Space Station since November of last year, there's going to be 11 people on board, so no, not enough, not enough bedrooms to go around. But whenever Crew 1 departs and returns, now scheduled for April 28th, they will have bedrooms for everybody.
And this is pretty cool that Victor is the one getting everybody, or getting the station ready for Crew 2 to arrive, because he flew on Crew 1 about 6 months ago. And this is actually his first trip to space and first trip on the International Space Station. So I'm sure that he is super excited to be able to get the space station set up for Crew 2's arrival and welcome the Crew 2 crew.
That's right. He's been lucky enough to have his own bedroom. I think they might have done rock, paper, scissors. I'm not exactly sure how they had it, but Commander Mike Hopkins actually has been sleeping in Crew Dragon Resilience during his stay aboard the International Space Station. Dragon Resilience and Crew Dragon Endeavour will be sleep stations for some of the crew that are coming up now. I believe Hopkins will continue to sleep in Crew Dragon Resilience, and I'm not sure who's going to do the rock, paper, scissors, or whatever game they were playing earlier, the one from Thomas' childhood. That was so fun to find out. But they'll probably play a game to see who's going to sleep in Endeavour for the time being. In the meantime, Victor Glover continues to set up the station, and that'll be ready again for the Crew 2 astronauts whenever Crew 1 departs.
I wonder if they're fighting for sleeping in Crew Dragon, because I've heard that the best view is from Dragon attached to the space station.
That's true. The Russian sleep quarters have a window, so I'm sure a lot of the crew members on the USOS side are a little jealous of that. There are 4 sleep stations on each of actually the walls. They kind of look like telephone booths, but they're on the ceiling and on the floor as well. But they do not have windows, so it's just the Russian segment that has the windows, and of course the lucky one that gets to sleep in a Crew Dragon.
It sounds like we do have audio on station, so we might hear some call-outs there and some comms. Again, if you're just now joining us, what you are looking at is a view from the International Space Station as Victor Glover is getting the station ready for Crew 2's arrival. And he just floated off the screen.
And Icon 2, one clarifying question. You just reported you had the fasteners hand tight on the left side wall. Is that all of the fasteners, including the ones you couldn't get to with the tool earlier?
Negative. Of the 8, only 4 are engaged in hand tight. The 4 centered. They are not engaged at all. It's an interesting fastener that requires you to kind of loosen it. Then this wing nut catches, and then you can tighten it. And I cannot actuate it. So the 4 center ones are completely disengaged.
Okay, we copy. We're thinking we're probably going to need those engaged, but we're still talking about it, so stand by.
So what you just heard, the crew aboard the International Space Station, including Victor Glover, are now about 3 hours into their workday, having woken up just a few hours ago. Not shifting quite with the Crew 2 astronauts, who after doffing their suits will have a meal and then enter into a sleep period. Part of the reason why they are on a 23-hour trajectory. But the voices you were hearing were Victor Glover on board the International Space Station, and I believe that was the voice of Kathy Bolt, who is a Capcom over in Mission Control Houston.
And that is so cool, Gary, that we get to hear them live on the International Space Station, because it is...
Dragon SpaceX for PMC.
PMC.
Dragon, for awareness, we can perform the PMC at any time, so if desire to perform early, just let us know.
Okay, thanks. We'll let you know.
We got some more communications with the core to the crew.
And Icon 2 with forward plan.
It's actually incredible, Jesse, to hear and see both at the same time. Two different crews on two different sleep schedules in space. And they'll be joining each other in space when they dock about 23 hours from now. What you heard on the Dragon side was a PMC, or a private medical conference. These are common through really any human space flight. So the private medical conference will be the first chance for...
I wanted to fit check a tool. I've got the 3/16 L wrench. It's going to be close, but it might work. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, we were going to let you know that we do need to get those fasteners at least hand tightened, and our suggestion would be to back off the seat track a little bit, get it loose, and then try and get under that seat track, and then hand tighten as best you can.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that. That seat track is engaged by two very large torque fasteners, and removing those is always a risk because they're really easy to strip in removal. I had to do it earlier today, so I think we can do that. They're engaged all the way now, so it'll be a little higher torque. But if you're okay with that risk, then I will put that in work. I've got the tools.
And Ike, to be clear, we did talk about that, but we do only want those fasteners backed off just a couple of turns, if possible.
Again, really cool to see two...
Yeah, a couple of turns isn't going to do anything for you, so I'm going to have to almost completely remove the seat track to make a difference. So a couple of turns would essentially just like break torque, and it's a very long fastener with a lot of closely spaced threads. So a couple of turns is going to get me essentially no difference, and I have to get a tool right underneath where the seat track covers. So the plane to engage the tool into the hex head is the same plane that I engage the torque fitting to get the seat track installed. So I actually would, to make this simple, I'd have to completely remove one side of the seat track, but if I completely back them out, maybe like a quarter of an inch remaining, it's like an 1.5 inch long fastener. So if I leave like a quarter of an inch or half an inch, then I've got some access to get in there and use the L wrench.
Yeah, and Ike, we understand, and our goal is just for you to not back it out completely. So back it out as far as you need to be able to get the access you need. Copy, thumbs up.
And some communications with Victor, getting the basically the bed ready for crew 2 or one of the crew members. And you may have heard them call him Ike on the comms. They talked about this during crew 1. Ike stands for KE, which is I know everything. And so they joked about it around that time, and now I think everybody just calls him Ike.
That's right. When asked about it, he'll often say, it's a good opportunity and a reminder to keep his mouth shut. He has said that several times. So that's what they're doing on board the International Space Station now, is really just walking through the procedures of installing that new bedroom. So there's bolts, and they have to make sure that things don't strip. Things are a little bit different in space. What's nice is that Victor Glover does not have to do it alone. He's got support on the ground there at Mission Control Houston. The voice you're hearing was a Capcom, so all the different flight control support members are able to filter the information through that Capcom, who is Kathy Bolt today, up to Victor Glover as he kind of works his way through some of these procedures, which were nice and conveniently velcroed or fastened onto his hip with a little tablet. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and you could see that Velcro on his pants. Obviously, they're in space, so it's probably hard to be able to have...
SpaceX Endeavour, we're ready for the PMC.
Okay, SpaceX copies. We'll get that in work.
It's more communications with the core to Dragon. They're getting ready to perform the PMC.
Private medical conference, that's right, and that'll be one of those checks before they go ahead and go to bed. There's a couple more things. They have their meal, and then they have a pre-sleep period, basically just kind of get situated, because again, they have a sleep period built into their rendezvous to the International Space Station. We've heard some of the communications with the Corps here on the ground mentioning that private medical conference was very flexible in terms of timing. They could have talked really any point before their sleep period, just make sure they're okay, feeling good before they head to bed for what's allotted an 8-hour sleep period.
Yeah, and they have multiple check-ins, right, for these medical check-ins to make sure that they are healthy throughout their entire mission. And they have a dedicated flight surgeon, correct, or a doctor that's dedicated to each of the crew members. So when they do this PMC, there is one for each crew member.
That's right. And they'll often staff mission control with surgeons and biomedical engineers that are able to monitor not only the health of the astronauts, but also some of the support equipment to help them maintain their health. So this includes a advanced resistive exercise device that sort of simulates weightlifting, but you don't really lift weights in zero gravity, so it sort of simulates that. It does get up to pretty intense resistance, hundreds of pounds kinds of resistance. They also have a stationary bicycle and a treadmill.
So they do get to work out in space.
They get to, and they have to. Yeah, that
Right.
actually maintain their muscle and bone density when in space. If they were to just leave it alone, you would see some deterioration in both of those. But they found out that exercising regularly, they give them about 2.5 hours every day by doing a combination of resistive exercise and aerobic exercise. It really helps to maintain that bone and muscle mass when they're in space for that long.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're looking at on your screen is, on your left-hand screen, a beautiful view of Earth. And on your right-hand screen is Victor, whom looks like he is upside down in the view, but there is no upside down or right side up in space. So he's there preparing for the Crew 2's arrival. What he's working on right now is getting one of the bedrooms ready. And he's working with the team on the ground. They are assisting him with this preparation.
The view on the left is a view of the Mediterranean Sea. The International Space Station flying about 262 statute miles right over it on a southeasterly trajectory about to head over Egypt. That's what you see in the distance there. Now, the crew themselves have a pretty packed work day today. There's it's generally like that. Just ahead of really every day is crammed to about 5-minute increments, planned way in advance for all of the crew to perform their various experiments. As you see now, Victor Glover working on the install of the CASA, or the new bedroom of the International Space Station. In the meantime, 2 other astronauts, Commander Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, are both exercising. Shannon Walker on the stationary bicycle, and Soichi Noguchi on the advanced resistive exercise device doing some weightlifting.
We do have a couple minutes before the crew on Crew Dragon begins their meal. So we'll take some of your questions. Again, if you do have any questions, please use the hashtag #LaunchAmerica. And we have a question here. Will Crew 2 have to sleep in the Crew 2 capsule?
The answer is yes, for one of the crew. So when Crew 2 arrives, they're going to bring the station population up to a whopping 11. Luckily, it will only be like that for a couple of days. There are currently 6 installed bedrooms on the International Space Station. You just saw...
from Columbus, I've got the 6-inch long 3/16 ball tip.
We are privatizing the loop.
Is going to make this
possible. Surgeon on private channel.
Copy, thanks.
Yeah, in that communication, they were kind of overlapping there, but one was from Victor Glover, who is installing that 5th bedroom that I was talking about, our 7th bedroom, once because in regular crew rotation flights, so for about 6 months at a time, there's going to be 7 crew on board the International Space Station, 4 on a commercial vehicle, in this case Dragon, and then 3 on the Russian Soyuz. That is on the other end of the International Space Station, but there's accommodations for all 7 now on board. So during that couple days handover where there's 11 on board, everyone's going to have to find a different room to sleep in. So you'll have someone in the Crew Dragon Resilience, someone in Crew Dragon Endeavor, and then others will find different areas around the International Space Station. At nighttime, they do turn the lights down. They have emergency lighting just in case there was some event that were to happen, so they could find their way to the next, to a milestone or find the way around station. But really, I mean, you can strap yourself to literally any wall with a sleeping bag and call it a bedroom. It's actually nice.
And now that the crew has started their meal, let's take a look ahead to our upcoming milestones. At 5:40 a.m. Pacific time, or 12:40 UTC, Mission Control will shift change, and that is necessary because this is a 24-hour flight, so we want to make sure that our crew in Mission Control gets some sleep and some rest. That is very important for these critical missions, so we will have a shift change. Then at 4:55 a.m. Pacific time, will be the first opportunity for the crew to talk to all of you, the viewers. That'll be pretty exciting to hear from the crew on board Dragon. At 9:25 a.m. Pacific time will be dinner time for the crew. And from there, a couple hours later, they will be going to sleep at 11 a.m. Pacific time, or 1800 GMT. And hopefully be able to get a good 8 hours of rest. And during their sleep period, we are going to be bringing you a recap of today's highlights and taking a closer look at the careers of each of our crew members.
Over the last 20 years, crews aboard the space station have completed over 3,000 scientific and educational experiments, and Crew 2 is prepared to add to that growing number. Once Crew 2 arrives at the space station, they'll spend the next 6 months working in our orbital laboratory. Having 7 crew members on board, with 5 of those on the U.S. side compared to the 3 we've had for years, significantly expands the amount of research that can be conducted.
Not only will the crew be contributing to hundreds of experiments, they'll also be bringing some with them on Crew Dragon. Resupply hardware for the vascular aging study is one of those experiments. This investigation is part of a series of studies from the Canadian Space Agency looking at the effects of weightlessness on astronauts' blood vessels and hearts. Vascular aging hones in on issues known to pose risks to astronauts' health, like radiation and insulation resistance, a precursor to type 2 diabetes. Studying the responses of the cardiovascular system in space better equips us to understand how our arteries age here on Earth.
Also launching aboard Crew Dragon is hardware for an experiment called Celestial Immunity. It builds on earlier studies to evaluate how gravity affects our immune response. It uses cells from both elderly and younger adult donors to study possible age-associated effects. The investigation could uncover novel immune pathways useful for the development of new vaccines and drugs to prevent and treat existing and emerging human diseases.
including hardware to support new science onboard station. Crew Dragon is carrying more than 500 pounds of cargo today. This also includes crew supplies like clothing and shoes, cameras, lights, and spare parts and tools for spacewalking, the station's exercise devices, and life support hardware on station.
And once Dragon is ready to come home, the teams will pack several hundred pounds of cargo inside the capsule to return to teams on Earth. When Crew 1 returns as early as next week, they'll be carrying more than 260 pounds of science samples for researchers back on Earth to analyze from more than a dozen research projects. They'll also bring any old or failed parts from station systems, giving technicians on the ground a chance to analyze hardware up close and potentially refurbish and refly parts to the station. So for the latest on some of the activities happening on board the International Space Station now, in fact, the crew is undergoing a number of different things as they're just starting their day on board. Let's head over to Courtney in Houston for the latest. Courtney?
Yep, thanks, Gary. As you guys just mentioned, the crew is awake aboard the station, preparing to welcome the Crew 2 astronauts tomorrow. On docking day, NASA's Victor Glover will be primed for monitoring Dragon for its final approach and will take the lead on hatch operations. And back here in Mission Control Houston, the Orbit 1 team is still on console, being led by Flight Director Paul Kanya. The flight controllers are in the middle of a shift handover, so Flight Director Adi Boulos will be leading the next shift of flight controllers. Several hours before crew boarded Dragon, the space station did their own go, no-go poll. There are several key systems we have to ensure are functioning properly before NASA can give their go for launch. And everything is still looking good on the station side for Dragon's arrival, so let's head back to Hawthorne for the latest on what's next for Dragon.
All right, over the next 22 hours, Dragon will execute a series of burns, which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. We've completed the first of our 5 major burns, the phase burn, that will bring the spacecraft close to station before we begin final approach maneuvers.
The next burn, which is based on what our orbital data shows us, is the boost burn, which raises Dragon's orbit until its orbit reaches an altitude just 10 kilometers lower than the space station. Followed soon after by the close co-elliptic burn to place Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station. Now this means that the crew will be about 10 kilometers lower than the station during their entire orbit around the Earth. The fourth maneuver is the transfer burn, where we're raising Dragon's apogee, or highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers below station. Then we round everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath station, this time just 2.5 kilometers below.
Then we'll get into the approach initiation and final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also when we start integrated operations between the Dragon control team here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston. The teams will transition to integrated operations roughly 45 minutes prior to approach initiation. During the approach, SpaceX flight controllers will work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including bidirectional communications with the station using the C2V2 system, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles, and sets up a data stream from Dragon to the station, giving another path for Dragon telemetry to come to the ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts aboard the station. They'll also maneuver Dragon to the proper attitude and initialize the navigation sensors used for the methodical approach to the station.
Tomorrow at approximately 12:40 a.m. Pacific Time, or 7:40 GMT, Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it's about 400 meters directly below the station. This maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of the 2 safety zones around the station that requires a set of go-no-go pulls with the different control teams. The first zone is called the approach ellipsoid, which is an imaginary shape measuring 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers, essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside this ellipsoid, referred to by the teams as the AE, it is configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. This means that if Dragon lost all control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its orbital path would take it inside the approach ellipsoid.
Once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below the station, it will be at waypoint 0, which is the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at 400 meters or continue on if all systems check out to approach to waypoint 1. By this point, the teams will do a go, no-go poll for Dragon to move inside the keep-out sphere, another zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the station with a radius of
Dragon
200
SpaceX
meters.
4 status update.
Go ahead.
And Dragon, we're working on some troubleshooting here regarding the privatization of the channel. Just wanted to check in with you because we've been out of comm for a little bit. If you're willing to stand by, we can still get that PMC in work.
Okay, we have nothing to report, so it's up to you.
Okay, we copy. We will still attempt this PMC and keep you updated on next steps.
Copy that.
Okay, so what you just heard from Core Chad Healy here in Mission Control Hawthorne, some status on the Dragon itself as they were in a loss of signal period with Dragon's orbit. That will be coming up soon. So we were describing Dragon's approach to the International Space Station with the Dragon making its way inside the keep-out sphere. Now, once it makes its way inside, it's another chance to confirm all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before moving closer to the station, and it carries a requirement similar to the AE that Dragon's orbital trajectory would not bring it inside the sphere if control was lost, but this time only for 4 orbits, or about 6 hours instead of 24 hours.
Dragon's move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it will be on what we call the docking axis, which essentially means it is directly in front of the docking port. The crew is headed to the forwardmost port on the International Space Station, which is the Node 2 forward port. That is where Dragon docked for both of our demonstration missions as well as Crew 1 last November. For those following along, Resilience, the Dragon spacecraft used for Crew 1, recently moved from the forward port to the space-facing port on the Harmony module in order to make room for the arrival of Crew 2. Harmony, or Node 2, is where both the international docking adapters are located. These were installed for new commercial spacecraft flights and any other future spacecraft that also uses the international docking standard.
Now, once Dragon is only 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the docking adapter. Dragon will then fly in and make contact with the docking adapter, giving us what we call a soft capture. The soft capture ring then retracts until sensors indicate it's time for hooks to drive in place to give us a hard capture and firmly secure Dragon to the station. Then it's time for leak checks and hatch opening, which is currently timelined to come about 2 hours following docking.
So lots of action still to cover over the next 22 hours. So stay with us as we continue our live coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew 2 mission to the International Space Station.
All right, if you're still with us, we are not going anywhere. We're going to continue our coverage of Crew Dragon's approach to the International Space Station. Now, coming up in just about 5 minutes on NASA TV, you're going to see a post-launch briefing over at the Kennedy Space Center. That's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check out that briefing, and then once it ends, come back to us. Or if you'd like to continue to watch our coverage, you can watch us over at SpaceX's YouTube channel. We're not going away, and we'll continue to provide coverage of Crew Dragon's approach to the International Space Station.
And while we coast, let's take some more of your questions from social. Keep using the hashtag LaunchAmerica. And here is a question. Why does it take almost 24 hours to get to the space station when Soyuz only takes about 6 hours?
That's right. It does have to do with the trajectory. It has to do with the not so much the capabilities of the Crew Dragon itself. Even on Demo 2, it was a little bit shorter, not quite the 23 hours we're seeing, but it was slightly shorter than that. Really, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the trajectory and of the orbital path from Dragon at sea level in Florida all the way to rendezvous with the International Space Station. But another key item to consider here is the crew's wake schedule. It is a long day to go from the ground, suit up, wake up. You go through the whole thing to get into Dragon and go ahead to launch. So what they have to do when considering trajectories is to build in some time for the crew to get a sleep period. In fact, that's something we're going to see here in the next couple of hours, the crew going into a sleep period. They'll get 8 hours allotted for them to get some shut-eye, finding space around the Dragon, whether it's in their seat or whether it's strapped to a wall. They'll be able to do that and make their way to the International Space Station that way.
Sleep is a very good thing to get. We have another one here. Good morning. Good morning. Great job. Thank you. Congrats to NASA and SpaceX. What size is or dimensions of the International Space Station, if you know offhand, Gary, and how many total crew can the International Space Station hold?
Yeah, these are great questions that are coming in. So it's about the size of an American football field. That is the size that we like to say. In terms of volume, it's about the size of a 5-bedroom house, about 29,000 cubic feet is if you're thinking of it that way. But 5-bedroom house, or about the length of a 747 fuselage. So that's about the proportion size. It's roomy. It's got a room.
Sounds pretty big.
Yeah, for 11 crew that are going to be there for 4 days. There's plenty of space for everyone to find a different place to sleep. In fact, everyone's really going to get their own room. If you think about it, everyone will either get a bedroom or the Crew Dragon or their own module of the International Space Station. There is that much space to accommodate that.
Very cool. We've got another question here. What are the snacks the Crew 2 can eat during the journey to the space station? And how about water?
Yeah, plenty of snacks on board Crew 2. So they have enough meals for 12 meals, I believe, each. That's a lot of food. They don't necessarily need that for the journey as a baseline because it's only 23 hours. If you were to have 12 meals, yeah, you wouldn't
be pretty full, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily need that. But that's really just in case there is any sort of contingency where they would have to go on a 24-hour safe trajectory. You got some food for the ride back as well. Those meals ready to eat do last a long time. They're shelf stable for quite some time. But they do have snacks, and then they'll be able to eat, occasionally have some drinks until they get to the International Space Station.
We're now in a good configuration for the PMC. Let us know when you are ready.
Copy, we're ready.
Okay, copy. Got to privatize the channel. Next call will be from the surgeon on Dragon to Ground.
All right, so we won't hear Dragon to Ground communications to the Crew 2 astronauts on board Dragon Endeavour, Crew Dragon Endeavour, for a while. That you just heard that Dragon to Ground line that we're just hearing with the Quindar in front of it. That's the communications
Megan MacArthur in the front, Megan blowing kisses. Thomas and Aki ready for their ride to the space station. And here they come, the Crew 2 astronauts taking their first steps outside before their journey to space.
I love this moment. They're now going to have the opportunity to wave goodbye from a safe distance. And it looks like Bob Behnken is there and with the son of he and Megan MacArthur.
ONC departure on schedule.
Right, so we just heard that announcement that the crew has departed the operations and checkout building on schedule. And we can see the astronauts inside the crew access arm. Commander Shane Kimbrough, here he is climbing inside Crew Dragon Endeavour. We call this process ingress.
We now see suit technicians will help the crew members get buckled in. As you can see, the side hatch has just been closed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Mission and liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station. The vehicle is pitching downrange. 9 Merlin engines on the first stage providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Hearing good calls on first stage performance so far.
Plus 30 seconds into the second rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Earlier today at 5:49 a.m., NASA and SpaceX Crew 2 mission blasted off from Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A. The Crew 2 mission is the second crew rotation flight of the Crew Dragon spacecraft and Falcon 9 rocket, carrying NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur, JAXA astronaut Aki Hoshide, and ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet to the International Space Station. My name is Jackie McGinnis, NASA Press Secretary, and I'm joined here today by Acting NASA Administrator Steve Jurczyk, Elon Musk, Chief Engineer at SpaceX, Kathy Leaders, Associate Administrator for NASA's Human Exploration Operations Mission Directorate, Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joe Montalbano, Manager of the International Space Station Program at NASA, Hiroshi Sasaki, Vice President and Director General of JAXA's Human Spaceflight Technology Directorate, and Frank Chavina, Manager of the International Space Station Program at the European Space Agency. Each speaker will make brief remarks, and then we will open the lines for questions from the media. For reporters on the line, press *1 to get into the queue to ask a question. Please remember to state your name and media affiliation before you speak, and address the speaker you'd like to answer your question. Please only ask one question and address one per speaker at a time. You may enter the queue again and ask additional questions. First up, we'll hear from Acting Administrator Steve Jurczyk.
Hey, thank you, Jackie, and it's just great to be here today. So first, I want to thank and congratulate the NASA team, SpaceX team, and our international partners. What we do is really challenging, but also rewarding, and we could not do it without our commercial and international partners. So thank you and congratulations. Watching a launch from Kennedy Space Center never gets old for me. I've watched many launches, and watching a pre-DAW launch is especially exciting and just visually stunning. And this launch was, and a little bit different for me this time as acting administrator, but again, I'm just congratulations team. I could not be more proud of the team. It's been a really incredible year for NASA, for all our mission areas, but particularly for human spaceflight with 3 launches in 11 months. And it's hard to believe it was just 11 months ago, last May, where we were in the room we were watching the launch from today and doing the first flight readiness review for a human exploration mission in just about a decade. And then we did the Demo 2 mission, and it's just been incredible to be a part of it. This marks many important milestones, but it really is important for getting a regular cadence of crew to the station and back. And it's going to really accelerate the research and technology development that we're able to do on station. And I'm really looking forward to what crew, I've really enjoyed watching what Crew 1 has been able to accomplish. And I'm going to really enjoy what Crew 2 is going to do on their 6-month stint on ISS. It took 10 years to get here, to achieve this bold vision we had for commercial crew. And again, it's been amazing what the team has been able to accomplish. What we do on ISS is important, not only for the research and technology development that we do for here on Earth, but also to prepare for what we're going to do in the future. So ISS is not only important for our commercial activities in space and stimulating those, but also for our exploration missions. We'll continue to celebrate the marvels of the International Space Station and the science and technology development that it'll be conducting as we look to the future of sending astronauts to lunar orbit and eventually the surface, and then our ultimate goal of sending astronauts to Mars. So coupled with our robotic exploration and our Earth science missions that look down at Earth, I'm proud to be a part of this team that makes it all happen and look easy. And I can assure you it is not easy. But we have an incredibly talented team at NASA, along with our commercial international partners, and I know they've gotten the job done this last year, and I know they're going to get the job done moving forward. So thank you.
Thanks. And now we have Elon Musk, Chief Engineer at SpaceX.
Thank you. I think actually Steve said really all the really important things. I'm just really proud of the SpaceX team and honored to be partnered with NASA and helping with Jackson and ESA as well. Just thrilled to be part of advancing human spaceflight, and looking forward to going beyond Earth orbit to the Moon and Mars, and helping make humanity a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species one day. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Kathy Leaders, Associate Administrator for NASA's Human Exploration Operations Mission Directorate.
Wow. I mean, I think I'm just always amazed at the NASA and in particular the SpaceX team that diligently stepped through and got us ready to fly once again. And really want to thank Elon and the team from a HEO perspective, and thank Steve Stitch and Joel here, who have been working really hard to keep this cadence going. It's a very, very, very exciting time for human exploration right now, just like Steve said. Joel every day advances science and technology on the International Space Station, and that has really been enabled with the activities and the flights that SpaceX has provided for us over the last 11 months, like we said, and the commercial crew team has been working to keep that science and technology development going. Joel's had a busy month. We were talking the other day about he just had a Soyuz launch, a Soyuz landing. Now we've got a commercial crew launch, and we're going to be obviously working through and making sure we get the 4 crew members there and safely to station. But then Steve and Joel are going to be getting ready for a Crew 1 landing with the SpaceX folks. So very, very, very exciting time.